Holocaust Memorial Day is an important moment each year to come together and remember the atrocities of the Holocaust and subsequent genocides, including places like Rwanda and Yugoslavia. It is an opportunity to reflect on the hundreds and thousands of victims lost to prejudice and hate, and a chance to reaffirm our commitment to resisting discrimination and intolerance. It is critical that we use this opportunity to remember and reflect so that we can ensure that history does not repeat itself. Every year, a chosen theme helps to focus our reflections on a particular aspect of Holocaust remembrance and guides us to think about our own behaviours and choices in light of lessons from those dark strains in our collective history. This year's theme, Be the Light in the Darkness, invites us to remember that even when circumstances are bleak, we have within us the ability to be the light ourselves and be loving and kind towards our fellow humans. It is an important theme, one which brings us back to both recognise the darkness and the distortion of hatred, bigotry and persecution, and at the same time to celebrate the hope, strength and bravery of those throughout history who found ways to challenge that darkness. It is also a particularly poignant lesson to be reminded of, given the circumstances we have found ourselves in now with the COVID virus and its social and economic repercussions. We may continue to grapple with the darkness, including misinformation and bigotry, yet in doing so, we can all...
Emma Lowell-Buck, Member of Parliament for South Shields. Holocaust Memorial Day 2021 is quite unlike any other we've had in past years. We usually stand together, in person, in solidarity and in united reflection and remembrance, able to touch, join hands, put an arm of comfort around a shoulder. This past year has reminded us of how it can feel to be isolated, frightened, confused and fearful of the future, having to trust and rely on authorities to give us the correct information and direction. The emotions we have experienced during this awful pandemic pale into comparison to the terror and horrors experienced by people who are and have been persecuted and who have become victims of genocide because of their faith, their identity, their race, their beliefs, their associations, or because of those who seek power at any cost. There is so much wrong with our world and our global society at this present time. It feels like a time of darkness is upon us. There is uncertainty, change, bereavement, blame and loss clouding a clear view of the future, not only because of the pandemic, because of other world events that threaten our stability. Our own older and vulnerable citizens' lives have changed beyond belief due to shielding and lockdowns, and our young people can't see what their future might look like with their education and prospects disrupted and an economy on its knees. In these troubled times, it has never been more important to share the stories of Holocaust survivors and the stories of all who have experienced persecution, genocide and conflict. We must never let our own troubles distract us from these important lessons. Lessons of hope, of bravery, of compassion and empathy. We must always remember to look for the light in the darkness, no matter how impossible that seems. Light is always there, even though it may be the smallest of glimmers. It is this light that has saved lives, protected people and been something to cling on to. We can all be the light in someone's darkness. The smallest act of kindness can make the biggest difference. If we see or hear someone being bullied, if we hear or read derogatory terms being used, if we find someone being ignored or dismissed, we must stand up, speak up and help. Hatred and discrimination thrives on silence and inaction. The worst atrocities and genocides all begin somewhere with hatred and oppression. I pledge today to continue to use my position to stand up for those who have no voice, to defend the defenceless and try to be a light to help others find their way. I've been overwhelmed by the kindness shown by so many people to others in our communities during this pandemic. It reassures me that we are looking after one another. but we can never be complacent. Hatred feeds on vulnerability. I want to end with just some brave words from Anne Frank, whose inspirational thoughts can remind us today to always stay focused on the light, no matter how far away that might seem. Anne wrote this on July the 15th, 1944, less than 1 month before the Nazis arrested her and her family, sending them all to concentration camps. She wrote, "It's difficult in times like these. Ideals, dreams and cherished hopes rise within us, only to be crushed by grim reality. It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart. It's utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering and death. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions, and yet when I look up at the sky, I sometimes feel that everything will change for the better, that this cruelty too shall end, that peace and tranquility will return once more." Peace did return, Anne was right, but that was after unimaginable suffering. We must do everything in our power now to preserve that peace and to protect one another.
It's a real honour for me as a Member of Parliament for the Jarrow constituency to join you in commemorating the 76th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. Holocaust Memorial Day gives us an opportunity to reflect, to mourn and to remember what happened in the Holocaust with all genocides since. It also reminds us how important it is to learn lessons from the Holocaust and the need to stand up and speak out against racism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, homophobia and other forms of intolerance still all too common in our world. Today marks the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi concentration death camp in occupied Poland. Over 1 million people were killed at the camp, but even for those who survived, the physical and mental scars of their torture would live with them forever. Today is the day for everyone to remember the 6 million Jewish people who were murdered in the Holocaust and the millions of people killed under Nazi persecution and from genocide which followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. For the few survivors of the Holocaust who are still with us today, their stories remain just as important now as ever. And there is no better education for the future than the guarantee that we will always be able to remember the past. The world has a duty to remember that the Holocaust was a wicked and evil attempt to eliminate millions of innocent Jewish people and so many others, including trade unionists, the elderly, the disabled and gay people, all of whom were victims of such horrific Nazi brutality. They were heartlessly killed for no other reason than they were appallingly identified as inferior by virtue of their ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation or political affiliation. That humans are capable of such appalling brutality based on hate is incomprehensible, but to fail to remember one of the darkest periods of human history would be an injustice to the millions who perished. It's essential that we continue to educate the next generation about the Holocaust so that they are aware of what happened under the Nazi regime and develop a more tolerant society free from racism, prejudice and bigotry. It may be impossible for us to fully appreciate the sheer scale of suffering during the Holocaust, but we can ensure that the atrocities of those times are never forgotten.
My name is Eric Joseph. I'm a member of the Newcastle upon Tyne Jewish community, and this year's Holocaust Memorial Day theme is to be a light in the darkness. It only takes a fraction of a second to switch on a light, and then it takes no effort at all just to leave the light on, shining into the darkness. There are many ways we can all shine a light with ease, and sometimes it need not involve using light at all, but by simply listening and asking a few questions, or even a question. So to take an example, in a world beset with fake news, conspiracy theories, abuse and lies, we hear now more in the various media, and especially over the internet, in a way that is unprecedented. And those who perpetrated the Holocaust, their descendants are still well with us, and they're on the internet, and they're at it today, spreading hatred and telling lies. When you hear things, listen carefully, listen to what is said, listen to what may be said to be the proof, and listen to what is said in defense, in reply, and then judge. That's it. Thank you.
Light. Darkness, an intense ray of misery and hate, if fed well, shines so bright it blackened one's heart. The brightest room can be so dark when there's no escape from it. Hatred and racism endeavours to tear humanity apart. The dark minds of those who place the tragic victims into the chambers of death are void of light, like the extinguished flames of candles. I pray for the time when mankind shows its worth and learns that all have the God-given right to exist. Darkness is no excuse for ignorance or doubt. Lighten up your mind and learn of your fellow human. Taste their food and dance with them. Knowledge is light, the beacon to guide you to a more level plan. A candle flame can be seen from so far off, so much so that we are unaware of what colour or persuasion has lit it. Just that it exists and gives us hope to reach a brighter future. Genocide happens. It's not for us to forget it. A world where we are responsible for every candle lit, so strive forward and do not retreat to where we were.
It is a great privilege and honor to speak on Be the Light in the Darkness during this year's Holocaust Memorial Day. This year's theme resonates with the core teachings of the Holy Bible, which says, "Let your light so shine before men that they will see your good work and give glory to your Father which is in heaven." Light produces good work. Light is the antidote to evil. On this Memorial Day, I would like to consider review, reverse, redirect, responsibility, and rescue, which I call the 5 arrows of promoting light. Review takes us back to how Holocaust of Adolf Hitler's regime began with discrimination, especially against the Jews, and later ballooned into a doomsday movement. Against this backdrop, the candlelight of promoting equality of humanity is what we need to roll back this darkness. Reversing the Holocaust trend today implies a conscious discouragement and systematic elimination of discrimination in our world. To achieve this, we need the candlelight of tolerance. If the energy put into the Holocaust was redirected to a beneficial cause, the world would have been a better place for all. Bringing all nations to the table of collective responsibility will halt future Holocaust. In this case, a great sense of caution and adequate consideration of consequences of action become the candlelight the world needs for a common good. Rescue of humanity is the final outcome of holding up the candlelight against the darkness of Holocaust. Everyone should promote the light of knowledge against the darkness of ignorance. Together we can rescue the world and avoid an...
On the day before the first national lockdown was announced in March last year, churches across the country encouraged people to light a candle and place it in the window of their homes. as a symbol of prayer and of hope for all who were suffering from coronavirus. That seems a long time ago now, and we have endured many days of isolation and darkness in the months since then, when the news agenda has been dominated by COVID-19. And this year, on Holocaust Memorial Day, that symbol of light has once again been chosen as the theme for our remembrance on the 27th of January 2021. The call to be a light in the darkness is at the heart of our observance of this important day. And while it encourages everyone to reflect on the depths humanity can sink to, it also allows us to celebrate the ways individuals and communities resisted that darkness to be the light before, during, and after genocide. Amid the darkness of any genocide, there have always been those who have opposed the regime, risking their own lives, homes, and communities. Those who have maintained their faith and culture during genocide and defied the ambitions of regimes to eradicate entire groups. Holocaust survivors often emphasize that any kindness, when surrounded by suffering, indifference, and persecution, is powerful. Even small acts of kindness can mean so much. Holocaust Memorial Day enables us to remember, and to remember for a purpose. It gives us a responsibility to work for a safer, better future for everyone. We can all step up and use our talents to tackle prejudice, discrimination, and intolerance wherever we encounter them. Let us pray. Living God, you have lit the day with the sun's light and the midnight with shining stars. Lighten our hearts with the bright beams of the Son of Righteousness, risen with healing in his wings, and so preserve us in the doing of your will, that at the last we may shine as the stars forever. Amen.
We recognise that the Holocaust shook the foundations of modern civilization. Its unprecedented character and horror will always hold universal meaning. We believe the Holocaust must have a permanent place in our nation's collective memory. We honour the survivors still with us and reaffirm the shared goals of mutual understanding and justice. We make sure that the future generations understand the causes of Holocaust and reflect upon the consequences. We vow to remember the victims of Nazi persecution and all genocide. We value the sacrifices of those who have risked their lives to protect or rescue victims, as touchstone of the human capacity for good and the face of evil. We recognise that humanity is still sacred by the belief that race, religion, disability or sexuality makes people's lives worth less than others. Genocide, anti-Semitism, racism, discrimination continue. We have a sacred responsibility to fight these evils. We pledge to strengthen our efforts to promote education and research about the Holocaust and other genocide. We will do our utmost to make sure the lessons of such events are fully learned. We will continue to encourage Holocaust Remembrance Day by holding an annual UK Holocaust Memorial Day. We condemn the evils of prejudice, discrimination and racism. We value a free, tolerant and democratic society. We would like to invite to join the nation in lighting a candle and placing it safely in your window at 8 p.m. this evening.